What if Naruto, the fourth's domination a transmigrator has taken over the body of the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, during Orochimaru's Impure world resurrection? Hiruzen Sarutobi, Minato, why have you become so cruel? You are no longer the kind and gentle Minato I once knew. Orochimaru, how is his power so immense? This energy. What kind of power is this? Minato Namikaze, third Hokage, to thank you for how you cared for Naruto all these years. I think I'll send you straight to hell. Not my story, just translating it so I can make a what if on YouTube chapter 1. Kicking the coffin lid away. Where the hell am I? How did I end up in a desert? Am I dead? Suddenly, a shiver ran through his body. After a moment, he realized that he had transmigrated. To make matters worse, he had taken over the body of Minato Namikaze after his death. He was currently trapped inside the stomach of the Reaper. He had replaced the original Minato, merging with his soul, his energy, and his memories. All of Minato's legendary abilities were now his: Sage Mode, the A-rank Rasengan, and the Flying Thunder God technique. At that moment, the traveler remembered the essential cheat for any transmigrator, the system. He silently recited in his mind, "System." Sure enough, a moment later, a cold, electronic voice rang in his head. Ding. This is the sign-in system. The host can sign in at various locations to obtain rewards. You can also sign in on specific people to obtain chakra attributes, ninjutsu, chakra doubling, bloodline limits, and more. But that is not even the most amazing feature of this system. As the synthesized voice spoke, it transformed into the melodious voice of a girl. A spirit appearing as a girl with long blue hair reaching her waist, tied in twin tails, appeared before Minato. Seeing the shock in his eyes, the girl felt a smug glint in her own, clearly pleased with his reaction. Then, turning her head with a haughty air, she said, "For example, if you check in at certain locations, you may trigger a critical hit reward." Suppressing his delight, Minato asked, "What kind of critical hit reward?" The system sprite nodded her little head. "It is a reward consisting of items from other worlds, things like heavenly flames, cultivation techniques, the Kaioken, and Ultra Instinct." Minato looked at the system spirit with a complex expression. "System, how are your abilities so powerful?" She nodded smugly. "Systems are divided into trainee and junior levels. Above those are level 1, senior, level 3, level 4, and level 5. I don't know what lies beyond that, but I am currently a level 3 system." Minato nodded slightly and continued, "Then what level is the system that is always threatening to annihilate its host?" The spirit waved her hand dismissively. "Those are either trainee or beginner systems. By the way, do I have a newbie gift pack?" Minato asked suddenly. The system spirit rolled her eyes at him. "Ding! Congratulations, host! You have received a newbie gift pack. Do you wish to open it?" Minato chanted internally. "Open. Congratulations, host! You have obtained Captain-level spiritual pressure." Minato was overjoyed as a powerful surge of energy flooded his body. It was a strange energy, completely different from chakra, and much stronger. Then, Minato looked at the long sword that had appeared. "Ding! Congratulations, host! You have obtained the oldest fire-type Zanpakuto from the Bleach world, Ryujin Jaka." Minato was stunned. Was he meant to become the Reaper of the Naruto world? "Congratulations, host! You have obtained the skills Zanjutsu, Hakuda, Ho-Ho, and Shunpo." Holy crap, Minato thought, it's exactly what I wanted. A vast amount of knowledge flooded his mind. In an instant, he mastered the Shinigami combat techniques, including hand-to-hand combat and the flash step. After the initial excitement faded, Minato couldn't help but ask, "System, I noticed the Kido skills are missing from the set." The system ignored his question and chose to play dead. Minato looked around with a helpless expression. This was the spirit world, a place where only souls existed. Besides, he didn't even know how to use Kido yet. "System, how do you plan to get me out of here and back to the ninja world?" Minato asked in an annoyed tone. "System sprite, please leave a message if you need anything. This system is currently busy and will be idling, AFK." Minato was speechless, internally cursing. "You bastard. You were bragging about how great you were just now. I thought you were a pro, but you're just a noob." Fortunately, even if the spirit was unreliable, the functions remained. He could still sign in for rewards. On the other side, Hiruzen Sarutobi watched as Orochimaru summoned the coffins. He thought to himself, "No. We cannot let the third coffin emerge. I must stop it immediately." At the Konoha Stadium, he looked at Orochimaru on the rooftop. Hiruzen's heart was filled with complex emotions. He looked at the two figures already standing beside Orochimaru with a solemn expression. Those figures were the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, and the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. Even as reanimated souls, they retained their legendary abilities. They were not opponents he could easily handle. Moreover, a third coffin marked with the number 4 was rising. It was likely Minato. Fighting 3 Hokage-level powerhouses at once was an impossible task. Hiruzen quickly formed hand seals, using the Shuriken Shadow Clone technique to rain blades down upon the third coffin, attempting to pin it back into the ground. When Hiruzen saw the Shuriken firmly embedded in the wood, he breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed the fourth wouldn't be getting out. Orochimaru wasn't too concerned. Losing one summon wouldn't ruin his plan. But suddenly, the third coffin seemed to be possessed. Despite being suppressed by Hiruzen's jutsu, it slowly rose from the mud. Both Orochimaru and Hiruzen stared at it, their hearts filled with doubt. With a loud bang, the coffin lid flew several meters through the air, crashing into the purple barrier nearby. "Is this your clever way of helping me escape from this impure world reincarnation?" A lazy, dissatisfied voice came from within the coffin, instantly drawing everyone's attention. That voice. Hiruzen gasped in disbelief. Standing in the coffin was a handsome young man with blonde hair wearing the Hokage robe. Orochimaru stared, his heart filled with shock. "What's going on?" Orochimaru muttered. The person he had intended to summon was the fourth Hokage, Rasa, the man he had recently murdered. It shouldn't have been the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. On the sidelines, Kakashi Hatake, who was busy dealing with Sand Ninja, suddenly looked up. His 3-tomo Sharingan widened as he sensed a familiar presence. "This chakra aura," Kakashi exclaimed, his voice trembling with excitement. "It's my teacher, Minato Namikaze." Minato stepped out of the coffin and stretched his stiff body. To be honest, the feeling of being summoned like this really wasn't good. Chapter 2, Minato. Rest assured, I won't stop you. Upon seeing Minato Namikaze emerge, Hiruzen Sarutobi's face darkened. "You bastard," he spat, toying with the souls of the dead. As he spoke, he deliberately glanced at Minato, the accusation in his eyes self-evident. Orochimaru ignored Hiruzen's outburst, instead staring at Minato with a bewildered expression. "Why would I be able to summon you?" he muttered, completely stunned. Orochimaru's confusion left Hiruzen equally bewildered. "What does this mean?" the old man wondered. "Does it mean Orochimaru didn't intend to use Edo Tensei on Minato from the beginning?" Although Hiruzen had never learned the impure world reincarnation, he had seen the records in the Book of Seals. He knew the caster needed the physical remains of the deceased as a catalyst and a living human as a sacrifice. The ritual summoned the soul from the Pure Land and bound it to the vessel, using dust and ash to mimic the appearance of the deceased. Since Orochimaru had successfully summoned Minato, it proved he possessed Minato's DNA. Yet, the dialogue between the two felt completely wrong. Orochimaru was looking at Minato as if he had seen a ghost. However, Hiruzen didn't dwell on it for long. The coffin had been clearly marked with the title, Fourth. With the first and second Hokage already present, it seemed only natural for the fourth to follow. Hiruzen quickly found this reasoning enough to convince himself. Seeing Orochimaru's puzzled expression, Minato Namikaze flashed a bright, infectious smile. "Of course you summoned me, Orochimaru. Who else in this ninja world besides you has the ability to summon the first and second Hokage at the same time?" Minato thought to himself. To be honest, besides Orochimaru, there really is another one, Kabuto Yakushi, one of the masterminds behind the Fourth Shinobi World War. Besides, Minato continued with mock sincerity, the first and second have both made their appearances. It would be such a loss of face for me, the fourth, not to show up. Minato's smile was warm, but it didn't convince Orochimaru for a second. "No way," Orochimaru retorted. "That coffin was clearly meant for the fourth Ka." He had barely finished speaking when his entire body was sent flying backward. By the time he looked back at where he had been standing, Minato was already there. That was too fast, and the force was terrifying. Orochimaru thought, "I managed to block it, but I was still blasted away by the sheer impact. Minato has become even stronger since returning from the grave. A bead of cold sweat dripped from Orochimaru's forehead, his golden vertical pupils fixed intently on the man before him. In the split second it took to speak a few words, his opponent had seized the opportunity. He hadn't even seen a shadow move. If it weren't for his reflexes, honed through years of bloodshed, that attack would have left him severely wounded, if not dead. Orochimaru wiped the sweat from his brow, a distorted, sickly smile spreading across his pale face. His raspy voice echoed, as expected of the yellow flash. Even without the flying Raijin, your speed is breathtaking. Nearby, Hiruzen Sarutobi was deep in thought. He guessed that Orochimaru might not have originally intended to summon Minato. But regardless of why he appeared, Hiruzen saw it as a stroke of luck. He shouted toward Minato, "Minato! Come, help me deal with Orochimaru." Minato glanced at the man known as the strongest Hokage, but said nothing. Instead, he looked down at his own hands. "This body is truly terrible right now," he muttered. When he moved just now, he realized he felt no tactile feedback, no impact, no resistance. Even though his power and speed were enough to send a veteran cage-level fighter like Orochimaru flying, Minato felt nothing. He couldn't feel the real impact of the strike. There was no pain, no vibration, no recoil. Being in such a body made him incredibly uncomfortable. Something is definitely off, he thought. But at least I'm alive, right? Besides, I have the system as my gold finger, Minato comforted himself. This system is truly unique. It actually resurrected me this way. If it hadn't hijacked the ritual, the person standing here now would probably be the Fourth Hokage, Rasa. To take advantage of the Edo Tensei to let me replace him. How creative. Minato thought further. If my soul hadn't been strong enough to fuse with that captain-level spiritual pressure, I might not have even been able to climb out of that coffin. As for the third Hokage, Minato continued to ignore him. Although he possessed the original Minato's memories, he was a transmigrator. He was no longer the man who lived only for the sake of the leaf. He knew exactly what kind of life Naruto had lived in the original story, drinking expired milk and eating stale bread. He knew the villagers insulted his son, calling him a demon fox. Damn it, Hiruzen, Kushina and I died to protect Konoha. We trusted you to take care of Naruto, and this is how you did it? What about our house? What about the money from all those A-rank missions we completed? You greedy old man, you've embezzled it all. Just thinking about it made his blood boil. Besides, Orochimaru wasn't entirely wrong. The leadership of the Leaf had become cowards who distorted the true meaning of the will of fire. The original intent was, where the leaves dance, the fire burns. The fire's light will illuminate the village and let new leaves sprout. It meant the older generation should trust and protect the youth. Their sacrifice was meant to inspire the young to become the pillars of the future. But Hiruzen and his peers had turned it into a tool for brainwashing. The most famous victim was Itachi Uchiha, turned into a puppet who killed his own parents. Even Naruto Minato's son, in this world had been brainwashed into a teenager shouting about becoming Hokage every single day. Minato looked at Orochimaru, who was watching him with total focus. He flashed that signature, sun-like smile. In the blink of an eye, he appeared right beside Orochimaru and whispered in his ear, "Rest assured, Orochimaru. I have no intention of stopping you." Chapter 3. Physical changes. Then, to Orochimaru's horrified gaze, Minato returned to his original position. Orochimaru quickly recovered from his shock. A smile appeared on his pale, sickly face, and his scarlet tongue licked the Kusanagi sword in his hand in an unsettling way. A hoarse voice rang out, "Hey! You really are something, Minato." Minato smiled, not answering Orochimaru's question, but instead communicating with the system in his mind. "System, you made me revive in this way. Don't you have any other compensation? To transmigrate to the Pure Land, only to be reborn through the Impure world reincarnation, such an experience was rather tragic. There should be some compensation." Ding! Due to a system error during transport, the host's physical body has been restored, and the control of the Impure world reincarnation has been lifted. The mechanical voice of the system slowly echoed in Minato's mind. After hearing the system's explanation, Minato was completely stunned and stood there in place. Is this all the compensation and reward? I've already received a Shinigami's spiritual pressure, and besides, I would have been able to break free eventually, but restoring my physical body is still a great benefit, Minato thought to himself. The system remained silent for a moment before chiming again. Ding. Sign-in available on Hiruzen Sarutobi. Minato smiled and silently said, "Sign in." As soon as Minato finished speaking, the system's mechanical voice sounded again. Ding. Sign-in successful. Obtained. 5 elements great combo technique. Ding. Sign-in available on Orochimaru. Minato silently said, "Sign in." Ding. Sign-in successful. Congratulations, the host has obtained the Orochi-Ryu substitution technique. Minato was taken aback for a moment upon hearing this, then smiled helplessly. This ninjutsu was Orochimaru's signature move. After being fatally attacked, the user splits their body into countless small snakes, and the original body crawls out from the mouth of one. However, the body that crawls out enters a period of weakness because using the Orochi-style substitution technique consumes a massive amount of chakra. Still, this ninjutsu was ultimately just a backup for Minato. Putting aside Minato's current strength, he was arguably the most powerful being in the ninja world. Even the Nine Tails was just a troublesome pet to Minato now. Even though the Sage of Six Paths was hidden, and the God of Shinobi and the Ghost of the Uchiha were dead, Minato could roam the world with his ninjutsu and Flying Thunder God technique. Not to mention that he was an enhanced version of Minato Namikaze, possessing spiritual pressure and the strongest fire-type Zanpakuto, Ryujin Jaka. Minato. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked at Minato Namikaze with a strange expression. For some reason, he felt that Minato was acting strangely and something was off. However, he didn't have time to think about it further. He turned his gaze to the 2 coffins beside him, where the 2 figures inside were none other than the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, and the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. When Hashirama Senju emerged, he saw Hiruzen Sarutobi, scratched the back of his head, and greeted him with a smile. "I haven't seen you in ages, monkey." Tobirama Senju, standing nearby, was the first to react. "What's going on? How did Konoha become like this?" Before Hiruzen Sarutobi could answer, Tobirama looked at Minato Namikaze. "This person? The Fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze," Hiruzen Sarutobi answered. "The Fourth Hokage? He's already like us. He too has been resurrected through the Impure world reincarnation," Hashirama Senju remarked. Looking at the cracks on Minato Namikaze's body, he understood what was going on. Tobirama Senju spoke first. "Our resurrection this time was used by someone. They used the Impure world reincarnation to resurrect us, control us, and use our strength to destroy Konoha village." Hashirama Senju said, "I would say that such a ninjutsu should not have been developed in the first place." Tobirama Senju snorted coldly. And yet, there was a need for its existence. Minato ignored the 3 Hokages reminiscing and instead calmed his mind to observe the changes in his own body. In just a short while, Minato discovered that his reanimated body was transforming into a physical form. Within moments, Minato Namikaze could feel his own heartbeat. Sensing his own resurrection, he exhaled deeply. It feels good to feel like this. Minato Namikaze's change was noticed by Hashirama Senju. "Ha ha ha. This is too good to be true." After Hashirama noticed the changes in Minato, his eyes grew brighter, and he couldn't help but exclaim excitedly. Tobirama Senju, watching his older brother yell like a madman, felt a headache coming on. "Big brother, please show some restraint." Cough cough. Only after being reminded did Hashirama suppress his excitement. He looked at Minato Namikaze and said, "That's really incredible. To be able to forcibly restore one's own body like that, that's truly amazing strength." Tobirama Senju exclaimed in astonishment, "This power has surpassed even the limits of the Impure world reincarnation technique." Currently, the Senju brothers were restricted because Orochimaru feared their power. The sacrifices used were of poor quality, so they could not exert their full potential, holding less than 20% of their peak strength. Tobirama Senju suddenly raised his head, his sharp eyes fixed on Minato Namikaze and Hiruzen Sarutobi. "A genius from Konoha? But why did he die so young, just like us?" Looking at Hiruzen Sarutobi, he felt even more puzzled. Minato Namikaze had just emerged from the Impure world reincarnation and regained his physical body. Moreover, the other party was the Fourth Hokage. Tobirama firmly believed that Minato was a genius among geniuses. Why did such a talented person die so soon after becoming the Hokage? And why did the third Hokage regain power? Was there a conspiracy involved? What? Outside the barrier, some sharp-eyed people spotted them. Is this a joke? The first Hokage, second Hokage, and fourth Hokage. Holy crap, how can the third Hokage possibly win? Is Konoha going to be wiped out? He looks exactly like the statue on the Hokage rock. The fourth Hokage is actually quite handsome. A group of Anbu and civilian ninjas gathered outside the rooftop barrier, discussing the situation in shock. Just then, a young man with white hair and a man with a watermelon haircut arrived at the barrier. Upon seeing Minato, Kakashi couldn't help but exclaim, "It really is Minato-sensei." Might Guy excitedly added, "Kakashi, look. Inside the barrier are the first, second, and fourth Hokage." Chapter 4, Hokage, You're Getting Old. The commotion near the barrier attracted the attention of Minato Namikaze, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and Orochimaru. Minato turned his head and glanced at the barrier, recognizing the faces outside. Isn't that masked guy Kakashi? And that watermelon-headed man in the tight green suit, that's definitely Might Guy. And there's my former bodyguard, Genma Shiranui. The only difference was that the atmosphere surrounding them felt darker than before, perhaps a result of the third Hokage's long rule. Minato smiled slightly at everyone, revealing his signature sunny expression. Wow, the fourth Hokage is so imposing. Just one look from him makes me feel like I'm being stared down by the Nine Tails, whispered a civilian ninja. Inside Minato, the Nine Tails grumbled, Are you being polite, or just insulting me? Don't talk nonsense, another added. I think the first Hokage actually looks quite funny, almost like a clown. The fourth Hokage is so handsome. He just smiled at me. I want to give him a big thumbs up. The woman next to her retorted, He was clearly smiling at me. And just like that, a friendship capsized. Minato Namikaze, the culprit, remained completely unaware. Even if he had known, he would have simply laughed it off. Having been a fan of online novels in his previous life, he knew the absolute importance of strength. To him, once you have power, everything else, including relationships, falls into place. Teacher is still the same as always, he hasn't changed at all. Kakashi exclaimed, looking at Minato from outside the barrier. The various ninjas of Konoha all had different reactions as the Hokage's gaze swept over them. But the time for a reunion was over, the battlefield was calling. Minato looked at Orochimaru and then at Hiruzen Sarutobi. Orochimaru had already walked behind the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, and the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. He pierced their necks with kunai bearing control talismans. Immediately, the two legendary brothers retreated to Orochimaru's side, their eyes turning dull as the control took hold. Orochimaru spoke first. Sarutobi-sensei. Let's end this boring reminiscing here. It's almost time to start, isn't it? I hope you can hold on, Sarutobi-sensei, Orochimaru said with a sinister look. He then turned to Minato and added, Please don't interfere, Minato. Minato, showing a flash of interest, teased the Sannin, Why? I am the fourth Hokage of Konoha, after all. Orochimaru was furious, but he kept his voice steady as he replied to Minato. The current Konoha is not the village you remember. Don't you see its limitations? It is now dominated by fools and old men. Hiruzen Sarutobi, feeling a chill run down his spine, quickly barked at Orochimaru, Shut up, you bastard. He turned to Minato, his voice urgent. Minato, don't listen to his nonsense. Minato silently glanced at Hiruzen. Under that calm, blue-eyed gaze, the third Hokage's heart sank. Minato watched the two of them bickering and let out a cold laugh. I don't need you to tell me, Orochimaru. I have already seen what Konoha has become. It is not the village of the past. It has decayed. What? Hiruzen was taken aback. What did Minato mean? Could he really know what had happened while he was dead? Even Orochimaru was surprised. Minato had been dead for over a decade. How could he speak with such certainty? Orochimaru realized that this revived Minato was not only stronger than he was 10 years ago but far more mysterious. He also noted that Minato had somehow broken the shackles of the impure world reincarnation to regain a living, physical body. Minato looked directly at Hiruzen and spoke slowly. Third Hokage, you're not young anymore. Hiruzen's expression darkened. What are you implying, Minato? Minato ignored the question and began to recite, Where the leaves dance, the fire will never cease. Its light will illuminate the entire village and allow new leaves to sprout. This is the will of fire, the very thing you keep preaching. You, the third Hokage, should understand this better than anyone, Minato said, his voice laced with disappointment. Minato, what are you trying to say? Hiruzen stared coldly at his successor. Minato gave a chilling smile. Let's not beat around the bush. You know exactly what I mean. Orochimaru stood to the side with his arms crossed, curiously watching the confrontation. He wondered what shocking truths this perfect Hokage was about to reveal. Minato continued, ignoring the murderous glints in the eyes of those around him. It seems the third Hokage is a little reluctant to give up his position. He looked at Hiruzen's gloomy, aged face and continued, young people are the hope and the future of Konoha. The older generation must trust and protect them. Your sacrifices are meant to inspire them to become the pillars of the village. Third Hokage, you've grown old and weak. It's time for you to retire. Otherwise, Konoha will never grow. Your generation has become parasites, absorbing the nourishment of this towering tree until there is nothing left for the new leaves. Enough! A roar interrupted Minato. Hiruzen's face was twisted with anger and shame. He never expected that Minato, who had always been so respectful and obedient, would contradict him so publicly, let alone demand that he step down. Orochimaru's laughter rang out as he clapped his hands. Ha ha ha, what an irony. Orochimaru looked at Hiruzen's crumbling composure and mocked him. Did you hear that, Sarutobi-sensei? Even your precious fourth Hokage says it's over for you. I have to say, you really failed miserably. This is better than I imagined. Turning his gaze back to Minato, Orochimaru's eyes gleamed. Why don't you join me, fourth Hokage? Help me destroy this decaying village. After all, you said it yourself. Konoha is rotten to the core. Chapter 5. Battle begins. Upon hearing Orochimaru's words, Minato pondered for a moment, then shook his head and refused. No matter what, I am still the fourth Hokage of Konoha. Orochimaru's tone held a slight hint of feigned regret. He sighed and said, "Oh dear. What a pity. I was truly looking forward to finally fighting alongside the famous Yellow Flash." Minato gave Orochimaru a warm smile and said calmly, "You should sort out your own affairs first. By the way, do you truly intend to destroy Konoha?" Orochimaru was taken aback. He was surprised that the fourth Hokage, whom he remembered as a man who cared deeply for the village, would ask such a question with such detachment. Orochimaru gave Minato a sinister smile. Then, he looked at Hiruzen Sarutobi and said, "To be honest, Sarutobi-sensei, I wasn't convinced when you recommended Minato to be the fourth Hokage. I thought it was a terrible decision at the time. But now, it seems Minato is actually perfect for the role." Orochimaru. Upon hearing the mocking words, Hiruzen Sarutobi couldn't help but roar at his former student. "Let's deal with the immediate problem first. I know you can handle it," Orochimaru said with a playful expression. He ignored Hiruzen's rage, and his smile became even more sinister. Slowly extending his hands, he formed a strange hand seal. The first and second Hokage, resurrected through the Edo Tensei, seemed to snap into a cold imitation of life, taking a sudden step forward. Those outside the barrier became increasingly tense as they watched Hashirama and Tobirama move. They had also overheard the strange conversation between Minato and Orochimaru. At this moment, Kakashi and the others outside the rooftop barrier watched the scene with solemn expressions. One of the Anbu ninjas swallowed hard and whispered to the silver-haired ninja beside him, "The first Hokage. All the previous Hokage. Are they really dead?" Kakashi, sensing the confusion of the Anbu, began to share his insights. The Impure World Reincarnation is an S-rank kinjutsu developed by Tobirama Senju, the second Hokage. However, because the first Hokage felt that this technique toyed with the souls of the dead, it was sealed within the Scroll of Seals. The technique uses the DNA of the deceased as a medium to summon the soul, but it also requires a living human as a sacrifice. The Anbu ninjas turned to look at Kakashi. As the copy ninja and a former Anbu captain, his reputation was enough to earn their immediate respect. "So, what exactly is that talisman Orochimaru used?" Kakashi pondered for a moment before explaining. "The talisman is inserted into the head to suppress the original soul's personality. It turns them into nothing more than a simple killing puppet." Everyone became visibly worried. If that's the case, will the third Hokage be a match for them? Kakashi muttered to himself, his eyes fixed on the blonde figure inside. "I hope the third Hokage can hold them off. But Minato-sensei, what is wrong with you? The entire rooftop was enveloped by the 4 violet flames formation, and everyone outside was powerless to help. They could only pray that Hiruzen Sarutobi could withstand the combined assault of the first Hokage, the second Hokage, and Orochimaru. The only variable was Minato Namikaze. The people of Konoha knew his strength, yet his current behavior was inexplicable. Kakashi gazed at his teacher's figure, thinking, why isn't Sensei helping the third Hokage? Seeing that Minato wasn't under Orochimaru's control, Kakashi figured that with the fourth's speed, he should have been able to resolve the situation instantly. However, Minato remained completely unmoved. He stood there with a smile, looking like a spectator watching a play. Orochimaru glanced at Minato one last time. Are you going to stop me? When he realized the fourth had no intention of intervening, Orochimaru breathed a secret sigh of relief. Even though he was a Sannin, Minato's sudden appearance and terrifying speed earlier had shaken him. If the fourth Hokage chose to fight for the village, the outcome of this invasion would be decided in seconds. Minato's lack of action made the tense Orochimaru relax slightly. He hesitated for a moment, then glared at Hiruzen Sarutobi and shouted, in that case, let the battle begin, Sarutobi-sensei. Before the words had even faded, Orochimaru manipulated the 2 legendary Hokage to attack. Minato stood quietly in his spot, watching the chaos unfold. Since Orochimaru wasn't attacking him, he didn't bother to move. All he wanted to do now was leave this barrier, find a quiet place to complete his daily sign-in, and see if he could get any critical hit rewards from other worlds. As Orochimaru controlled the 2 Hokage, a lingering thought nagged at his mind. He had prepared the ritual to summon Rasa, the 4th case cage. So why did Minato Namikaze come out of that coffin instead?